and awesome characters and Titans? Sold! Well, I guess you know what I'm reviewing for today, so let's not waste any time here and get started with today's review on Attack on Titan Season 3, Part 2. Boy, was that a mouthful.
Following the events of the first half of Season 3, the Scouting Legion heads out to Shiganshina to reclaim Walmaria. Though things at first seem pretty straightforward, everything goes to literal hell when Reiner, Berthold, and the Beast Titan enter the scene in a battle that will literally determine the fate of humanity.
No, seriously, I really mean it when I say that the fate of humanity hangs in the balance here.
And to say any more at this point will cross into spoiler territory, which I will lightly tread on in this review. You have been warned. What will happen in the fight to end all fights? What secrets kept from us for 3 seasons reveal? Stick around and find out how it all goes down.
To say that the second half of Season 3 hit all the right marks for me is an understatement. And this is considering that I'm not the biggest Attack on Titan fan. But I'm willing to go out on a limb here and say that this was in fact one of the best shows I have seen all year, despite its flaws.
Overall, I give Attack on Titan Season 3 Part 2 a 90.
Let me start this analysis here by getting straight to the point. This arc was perfect.
This arc had everything that I wanted to see in the 3rd season of Attack on Titan. And not just with the Battle of Shiganshina or finding out what's in Grisha Yeager's basement. This season not only had the intriguing character arcs, suspenseful high-stakes story, and divulging further into the mystery of the walls, but it had the fights that I actually wanted to see. Yeah, I know. There were fight scenes in the first half of the season, but there was something missing in these scenes. Like, I don't know, Titans? There were barely any Titan fights in the first half of the season, and good lord, I missed that. Now, keeping in my review on Part 1 in mind, I didn't find anything wrong with the fights between the Scouting Legion and the military police. That wasn't necessarily what I took issue with. What I took issue with is that the Titans were not the actual focus in Part 1.
Because that's just what you want to see in a show about giant man-eating monsters, right? Conspiracy theories!
And I know a lot was going on in that arc and something had to give. But for a show called Attack on Titan, you kinda want to see more Titans.
Well, Part 2 delivers on that in spades.
I think what made the Titan fights beyond enthralling this time around was that the actual Titans, you know, the ones you have an actual reason to be afraid of and not the ones that serve nothing more than meme fodder, were the major enemies in this fight. It was so cool to see nearly all of the Titan shifters in action this time around because, save for the armored Titan, we rarely got to see these Titans for no more than 3 episodes. So if you were like me after the end of the first half of Season 3 and wondering when we get to see more Titan action, complete with erotic-looking Eren and Reiner fights, well, you're in luck, because this time around, you'll get plenty of Titan fights here.
Speaking of Titans, let's take a minute to talk about the best villain in the entire arc, Berthold. Don't worry, we'll talk about you in a minute.
Now I know what you're thinking here. The Beast Titan was in fact the main antagonist for Part 2. And while he was a formidable foe, Berthold had some decent screen time and a good bit of development. Well, Maybe not a whole lot of development, but I think we got a chance to examine his character a bit more here. Most of the times throughout the series that we see Berthold, he was often in the background having very little to say or do. Heck, even David Matranga would hilariously joke about how few lines he had. Season 2 gave a little more insight into his character, portraying him as this scared kid who genuinely regrets what he's doing.
And in Season 3? Well, sorry, Mom, but he's a bastard!
In Season 3, Berthold acts completely cold and heartless, willing to kill anyone who stands in his way. But deep down, he's actually a coward. Yeah, you hear him talk about how numb he seems to feel when he confronts the scouting legion within Shiganshina. But I got the impression the whole time that it's all just a mask. And I say that because when he dies, he screams and cries out to Aaron and company to save him. What the heck is that supposed to do? Like, that's actually going to help. How does he expect the people he betrayed and even fought against to have his back after all he's put them through? And even if that worked as a ruse for a surprise attack, what defense does he have being a stump? I'll bite your legs off!
Sorry, that Monty Python reference is kind of fresh in my mind. I recently saw the movie, so expect that.
Anyways, this all shows that Berthold, at his core, is still this scared child, but stripped of a moral center. If Reiner was the most damaged of the Titan shifters, then Berthold was the most immoral. As I said, he puts on this warrior facade as a means to cope with what he's done, when the reality is that he doesn't have that much maturity to bear the weight of those sins. And on top of that, Berthold had by far the most amazing Titan transformation in the entire series when he actually goes Titan. It is literally nuclear in every meaning of the word. It kills people within close proximity and ends with an actual mushroom cloud. How much more epic can you get? That is awesome. So, as strange as it may seem to focus on the one character that seemed to barely have a voice, again, the English voice actor joked about it, I think he was the most intriguing villain in this arc. Farewell, namesake of my cat.
Though while we're on the subject of villains, let's talk about the Beast Titan. See? You got your chance!
While I thought Berthold was the better villain here, the Beast Titan was in fact one of the best elements of this arc. After getting only a few brief appearances in Season 2, we finally get to see this mother in action, and it was glorious. The fight between him and the scouts was one of the most brutal and intense fights in the entire series, bar none, and was so epic that each attack he lands causes massive damage, leading the scouts caught in the crossfire to practically explode, leaving literal blood in the air. You heard me. This fight was so devastating that there was actual blood in the air. And don't even get me started on the clash between him and Levi. As short as that was, in fact, I would almost call it a one-sided fight, it was one of the few moments in anime that I found myself out of my seat cheering. The build-up and hype for this character was well worth it, and his presence was a dominating force. Heck, when Season 2 came out, I jokingly said I would nominate him for president come 2020. But I guess for now I'll have to deal with his less cooler younger brother for a little longer. Bottom line though, while I have to give best Attack on Titan villain to Berthold, the Beast Titan was a literal force to be reckoned with here and was one of the best parts of the entire season.
Moving on from the characters, the story was also a really great focal point. Or rather, it's not so much the story itself, but rather the drama.
Season 3 has by far been the most dramatic season of the entire series, and much of that comes from part 2. Remember the cliffhanger scene at the end of episode 49 with Eren, Levi, and Mikasa? The one where Eren gets smacked to the ground and Mikasa follows suit by attacking Levi? Well, little did we know at the time that this was a preview of one of the most gut-wrenching moments in the entire series. Now, I'll try to summarize this scene as best I can, but it's a bit of a long story, so bear with me. After suffering one of the most brutal attacks I've ever seen in anime, Armin is left in very critical condition, and yet is somehow still clinging to life.
Oh, good Lord, please don't show the body. Please don't. No, that was one of the worst things to see. No, please, please. Oh gosh! That's still so nightmarish. Allow me to make this other Monty Python reference, but Jesus Christ!
And as briefly mentioned in part 1, the Scouts now have the serum that can turn people into Titans. Levi is about to give Armin the injection when the only other surviving Scout from the Beast Titan attack, who we'll call Squirrel's Nest,
because his hair is ridiculous. And I don't particularly care for him. In fact, I care so little for him that I want to take one of the blades from somebody's ODM gear and stick them so far up his.
Anyways, Squirrel's Nest brings a critically injured Erwin Smith, who's also barely clinging to life, leading to the worst game of Would You Rather ever, making the tough decision of saving only one of these two characters.
Dun, dun, dun!
This scene was by far not only the most dramatic in the entire season, but the most dramatic in the entire series, period. The way this scene is set up, how it's presented, and its overall emotional impact are just fantastic. The episode where we mostly see this moment, called The Midnight Sun, is fully aware that this is a dramatic scene and that it needs to be treated with care. So, rather than start off with the title sequence, as most of the episodes have done, the episode in question simply gives us the title of the show and gets right into it. Plus, this scene drips with so much emotion because those who have seen the show up to this point know what's at stake. Armin and Erwin are characters that we've followed since season 1, so it's tough to watch the show come to an impasse where only one character can walk out alive. Even though it ends, obviously, with Armin getting the Titan serum and later killing Berthold, it doesn't make the scene any less tragic as we know what both of these characters mean to everyone involved. Again, this was one of the most dramatic moments in the entire series. And next to Reiner and Berthold's betrayal in season 2, it's by far the best Attack on Titan moment for me.
Well, there's certainly more that I wanted to say about this wonderful second half of season 3. I have to do my job here and address the fact that while this was a really great watch, it's not flawless.
One unique problem this second half had that I'm surprised no one has talked about was its opening credits. Attack on Titan is known for having some pretty awesome title sequences. In fact, the first is considered to be one of the best openings in anime. And sure, we got Linked Horizon back for the song, and there's a lot of Titans and action and scouts and, everything that you'd normally see in an Attack on Titan opening. Still, is it just me, or does the title sequence this time around seem kind of boring? Again, I know it seems like a strange thing to focus on here, but like I said earlier, this is a show that has some of the best title sequences in anime, and yet its latest is very lackluster.
And why is that? Well, in simplest terms, it's a lack of aesthetics.
Don't get me wrong, a title sequence at its core is meant to give viewers a preview of what they're going to see in the show, whether it be previewing characters or moments from the show. But what makes a good title sequence entertaining is aesthetics, how it's presented and what it presents. Attack on Titan sequences do in fact give you a glimpse of what you're about to see, but they also throw some imagery at you that's relevant to what you're about to see. The first title sequence to season 3 played on the fact that a lot of it focused on this whole conspiracy with the government, and it works well, even taking into account that this sequence made a rare move in not having Linked Horizon do the song. Yeah, no joke. Except for the first season 3 sequence, the J-pop band Linked Horizon did all of the title sequences for Attack on Titan. Heck, they've become so synonymous with Attack on Titan that they did the opening for Attack on Titan Junior High, and that was a parody. Anyways, getting back on track here and to the point, if you watch season 3 and look back at the latest title sequence, all it is giving audiences a preview of what's about to happen, almost shot for shot. And it's not particularly entertaining. I honestly felt like it gave too much away. It almost implies that the Scouting Legion defeats the Titan Shifters and manages to get to the basement, which is exactly what happens. It pretty much kills the hype you're supposed to feel when the episode actually starts. The only excitement I seemed to feel was when it ends with a glimpse of the basement. So yeah, as I said, it's an odd thing to focus on, but if the only thing exciting about an Attack on Titan opening is a door, then it's a bit of a disappointment.
Another problem that I had with this show that's a little less nitpicky and far more relevant, I kind of wish that this second half of season 3 was longer. But not in the way that you think.
While we're loosely on the subject of basement doors here, if there was one detail in this season that I really think should have been expanded on more, it was when the scouts finally discover what's actually in Grisha Jaeger's basement. There's a lot of information and backstory in this scene that I really think needed to be expanded on. Finding out that Grisha came from a foreign country that's out to enslave and or exterminate the race responsible for the Titans, and not to mention the lore surrounding the Titans themselves, is a lot to take in. And while the show gives the audience 2 episodes dedicated to this backstory, I feel like we could have gotten more details about Grisha's life in the Great Titan War. It would have played well for dramatic effect, and it would have thoroughly explained the history of the Eldians, and possibly the Marlians as well. Plus, structurally speaking, it makes more sense to split Grisha's backstory into at least 2 episodes. Like have one episode be about his life growing up until he's turned in as a traitor by Zeke. And then the second starting when he meets Aaron Kruger and gains the Attack Titan. Granted, there wasn't anything that wrong with how it presented itself in the show, and I'm sure there was a difficult balance to maintain behind the scenes. And shoot, it takes 50 plus episodes to get to this point, so it's still a somewhat satisfying payoff. Still, I think with as much information as there is to this plot point, I don't think it would have hurt to have at least another episode dedicated to this. Heck, if the first half managed to give 2 full episodes dedicated to 2 characters who didn't need that extra 20 minutes, why not give that extra 20 minutes to a character that really needs it? Okay, I'm not complaining too much here, but I think this was a detail worth more expansion, especially since this leads to literal expansion of the Attack on Titan world.
One final note I wanted to end this review on actually pertains to the season as a whole rather than just part 1 or part 2, because this was something that I didn't think about until after I finished watching part 2. At the time of recording this, and honestly in my recent memory, Attack on Titan Season 3 was one of the most relevant shows I've ever seen. And that's both in anime and in non-anime related shows.
I rarely, if at all, delve into controversial issues or topics, and I don't intend to do that in this bit of thought. But it wasn't until I finished watching the entire season that it hit me how relevant this show is in light of our world today. With its themes of corruption, oppression, and hiding the truth, Season 3 has a lot of relevant themes that apply to our current world. The first half of Season 3 showing how the higher-ups are willing to cover up the truth of what's actually going on within the walls and why they're even there in the first place, just so they can maintain their power, speaks volumes about the corruption that's often seen in governments worldwide today.
And if this sounded eerily similar to HBO's Chernobyl, you're not far off because it's the exact same scenario.
Fake news and journalism are also major aspects of the first part of Season 3, as they play into the continual cover-up of what's actually going on with those in charge, as well as the royal family. And it's beautiful to see when the corrupt bureaucrats are overthrown and a new government is put in place, rather than continue the lies as the previous body had done before, especially when it's discovered what's really in the basement. The new government openly shares what's going on to surprisingly mixed results, acknowledging that the public is smarter than what the previous government gave them credit for.
On the other hand, Part 2 took an eerie look at discrimination and hate and its effects.
When watching That Day, the episode where the scouts learn what's being kept in the basement, aka Grisha's backstory, and those opening moments where Grisha and his sister leave their compound, I remembered thinking to myself that this was not far off from the Holocaust. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if the author of the manga, Hajime Isayama, delved into a World War II history book for the idea of the treatment of the Marleyan-born Eldians. Here, this second half shows that, with all political references intended, walls don't work, whether in keeping people out or keeping them safe. Whether they're literal walls or figurative, eventually people will in fact scale them. And it also goes to show how oppression and discrimination will eventually come back in a pretty ugly way to those who encourage it. As I said in my review on the first half of Season 3, when you build a wall, everybody pays for it. And this season was a perfect example of that.
And honestly, with all that being said, I don't have any more to say except this was the season of Attack on Titan that I wanted, and every single minute of it was worth it. If you haven't checked it out already, do yourself a favor and go watch it. And so that wraps up today's review. As always, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to stick around for September when I start my Kyo anime event. Though, please don't hate me for the first review that I do for that month. Because if I'm going to do a Kyo Annie month, I'm going to do it on a show that I like rather than what everybody else recommends or likes. Okay? Great. See you the first of the month. Till next time, bye!